everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Genshin Impact, and today we're going to bring you a character review of none other than newly released 5-star Childe or Tartaglia. Today we're going to show you exactly how to use him to his full potential and what are some of the ways that you can build him and utilize him. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. More videos like this coming out, so stay tuned for those as well. But with that being said, let's get straight into it and start with his talents and constellations.
Right, so as is the case for all heroes, Childe has a basic attack. For him, he's going to perform 6 consecutive shots with a bow as just his normal attack. His charge attack is pretty typical as well for bow users, where he will aim and then do increased damage. When fully charged, the arrow will deal hydro damage and apply the Riptide status. Opponents affected by Riptide will suffer from AoE hydro damage effects when attacked by Tartaglia in various ways. Damage dealt in this way is considered normal attack damage. There's 2 effects that could happen here with the bow. Riptide Flash is where a fully charged aim shot hits an opponent affected by Riptide and deals consecutive bouts of AoE damage. This can occur once every 0.7 seconds, which is basically 100% uptime. Riptide Burst, defeating an opponent affected by Riptide, creates a Hydro Burst that inflicts Riptide on nearby opponents. So this is just a neat way to be able to spread Riptide without having to charge shot multiple people, as long as you just kill that one target who has it. His plunging attack will fire off some arrows midair before falling and striking the ground, dealing AoE damage upon impact. It is important to note though, that when Tartaglia is in Foul Legacy Raging Tide's melee stance, he cannot perform a plunging attack. His E is going to be that melee stance, Foul Legacy Raging Tide. He unleashes a set of weaponry made of pure water, and all of his attacks will deal hydro damage to surrounding opponents as he enters melee stance, as well as per his attacks. For his normal attack, he will deal 6 consecutive hydro strikes. For his charge attack, he consumes a certain amount of stamina to unleash a cross slash that deals hydro damage. There's also the passive of Riptide Slash, where hitting an opponent affected by Riptide with a melee attack unleashes Riptide Slash that deals AoE hydro damage, and damage dealt in this way is considered elemental skill damage, and this can only occur once every 1.5 seconds. After 30 seconds, or when the ability is used again, the skill will end, and Childe will return to his range stance, and the ability will enter a cooldown period. The longer Childe stays in his melee stance, the longer the CD will be. If the return to range stance occurs automatically after the 30 seconds, the CD is even longer and you take a slight time penalty. His ultimate ability, his Q, is going to be Havoc Obliteration. So this will do different things depending on what stance Childe is in when casting. The range stance will use Flash of Havoc, where you fire a hydro-imbued magic arrow dealing AoE hydro damage in a large area, and all the enemies in this area will have Riptide status applied. It also returns a portion of its energy cost after use. If you use it in his melee stance, he'll use Light of Obliteration, where he performs a slash with a large AoE dealing massive hydro damage to all surrounding opponents. This also triggers Riptide Blast. What Riptide Blast does is when obliterating waters hit an opponent affected by Riptide, it clears their status, but also triggers a Hydro Explosion that deals AoE hydro damage. Damage dealt in this way is considered Elemental Burst damage. So moving on to his passive talents, the first one being Never Ending, where you extend Riptide duration by 8 seconds. This could be pretty good if you want to be aim-shotting multiple targets to make sure it doesn't fall off before you enter your melee stance. His second passive talent, Sword of Torrents, when Childe is in his melee stance, or if his normal and charge attacks do crit damage, they will apply Riptide status on the enemy. And this is actually huge, because Riptide status typically is only available through bow form, but now that it's available in his melee stance, it allows you to stay in that form and not lose out on Riptide damage. His third passive talent, Master of Weaponry, makes it so that it increases your own party member's normal attack level by 1. We believe he's the only hero that has a passive like this, so if you have him, be sure to take advantage of it. It seems pretty strong. Now let's move on to his constellations.
Alright, so constellations, as always, there's 6 levels of constellations and we have to unlock them sequentially. At level 1, you get Foul Legacy Tide Withholder, and it decreases the cooldown of Foul Legacy, which is his elemental skill, by 20%, and that is pretty good, allows him to use that consistently. At Constellation level 2, you get Foul Legacy Understream, and what it does is when opponents affected by Riptide are defeated, Childe regenerates 4 elemental energy, so it's good to get those elemental energy up and use your Q more often. Level 3 is a generic constellation upgrade which allows you to increase the level of your elemental skill by 3 and increase the maximum upgrade level to 15. At level 4 you will unlock Abyssal Mayhem Hydro Sprout. And what it does is, if Tartaglia is in Foul Legacy Raging Tide melee stance, it triggers Riptide Slash against opponents on the field affected by Riptide every 4 seconds, otherwise triggers Riptide's Flash. And this is very solid in terms of just adding that additional damage to his overall output. Additionally, Riptide Slashes and Riptide Flashes triggered by the Constellation effects are not subject to time intervals that would typically apply to the 2 Riptide effects. So this is really good because it just allows you to trigger these additional effects more frequently. Frankly, for a level 4 Constellation, this is amazing value, and if you can get it, definitely go for it. At level 5, again, another generic upgrade. This time upgrades your Elemental Burst by 3 and increases the maximum upgrade level to 15. And lastly, if you somehow manage to get to C6, you will unlock Havoc Annihilation. And what it does is, when it's casted in melee stance, the cooldown of Foul Legacy Raging Tide, which again is E, is reset. This effect will only take place once Childe returns to his range mode. So this is really strong because what it allows you is to really maximize the uptime of your E to allow you to quickly switch into the range mode, proc to Q, get those marks on the opponents, and then quickly switch back into the melee stance and proc them. This is amazing. Again, in our opinion, level 4 and level 6 are fantastic constellation upgrades for Childe. But of course, given that he is a 5-star hero, it's going to be pretty hard to get there. But those are the breakpoints that if you want to main Childe, you definitely want to look for. But with that being said, let's move on and talk about his overall usage in the game. So in terms of Childe's use cases, we think, of course, as a 5-star, he's amazing. And really, we don't want to bifurcate too much between early and mid game or the late game here when it comes to Childe, because he's pretty consistent as he has a very defined role in the game, and that's going to be your main damage dealer. However you look at it, he is going to be a fantastic hero to have in your squad if you need that damage, especially when he can combo with other heroes that can help him set up those elemental reactions. And for that specific reason, we really think that he is extremely strong in co-op mode because of the fact that if you do have multiple players and multiple characters on the screen at the same time, it becomes a lot easier for you to set up those elemental reactions, such as Electro Charge, Vaporize, or Frozen. And those are going to be a lot of damage sources of Childe once he's in his melee mode and able to use his Hydro-infused auto attacks. Of course, in terms of specific areas, domains are going to be the place that Tartaglia or Childe really shines. He's going to be, apart from some Hydro-based domains, he is going to be amazing just about everywhere and help you to really push for those high-level dungeon rounds and help you to get those higher-level gears and artifacts. In single-player mode, of course, you can still utilize him to a pretty high level if you do have a team with a lot of supporty heroes, such as Fischl, Xianglin build out, but otherwise, there might be better options when it comes to pure damage, such as Diluc. With that being said, we'll shift over and talk about how do you build him in terms of weapon choices and artifacts.
Right, so moving on to the weapons, Childe is unique in that he is the first hero, and so far the only hero, that has both a ranged and melee stance, and this is very unique because it seems that a lot of his gameplay cycle is going to revolve around being in melee stance while taking advantage of some of the bow passives. So we want to go down the list of bows and just highlight some of the ones that we think will work really well with him. So if we start out at the top, Amos Bow and Skyward Harp, the 5 stars. Of course, the base attack is high and that's great. The substats are attack percent and crit rate percent respectively. And so these both work really well in terms of what stats they provide. Now, unfortunately, the passives just don't synergize as well with Childe's kit compared to some of the other bows that we'll talk about later down this list. So moving down, we have Compound Bow. We were considering this one. The passive is really good, but unfortunately, the substat of physical damage bonus, we feel like he won't be able to take full advantage of due to the hydro damage he does in melee form. This is something to keep in mind if you have a Compound Bow leveled up and built up. It's usable, but not optimal on him. The next bow on this list, Blackcliff Warbow, is something that we think is going to synergize amazingly with Childe. And the reason is, it's got 44 base attack, and crit damage substat, so definitely nothing to scoff at. But look at the passive here. After defeating an enemy, attack is increased by 12% for 30 seconds. This effect has a maximum of 3 stacks, so up to 36%, and the duration of each stack is independent of the others. So as long as you're going to keep killing enemies, this bow is essentially going to give you a flat 36% attack increase, and that's insane. Now considering, as Hal mentioned earlier, he excels in domain content, where you're going to be faced with a lot of mob rushes, Blackcliff Warbow is going to be amazing for you for a majority of the game. As we keep going down to talk about other 4 stars, another one we think could be really good is Rust. So it has slightly less attack at 42, and the substat is attack percentage, but the passive is what really makes this. And the way this works is, it increases normal attack damage by 40%, but decreases aim shot damage by 10%. Now, if you're somebody that loves to aim shot, this is probably not ideal for you. But because so much of Childe's damage potential is going to be in his melee form, you're not even going to have that option, and all you'll be doing is normal attacks. So this is essentially a flat 40% damage increase through his normal attacks, so if you want to play him as an attack-centered, crit damage, crit rate based hero, then we think Rust is probably one of the best bows that you could use with him. On the other hand, if you want to use him, as Hal mentioned earlier, as more of an elemental mastery type hero, and proc those elemental reactions with his hydro attacks in melee form, then the Stringless is a great choice. It comes with Elemental Mastery as a substat, and increases elemental skill and burst damage by 24%. This definitely has a lot of potential, and the way that Riptide synergizes with his melee attacks, it counts as elemental skill damage, so you'll definitely be able to take advantage of the passive here as well. Now finally, our favorite 3-star bow is going to be Slingshot. And now we're not recommending using a 3-star bow if you have better options, but just look at the passive. If a normal attack or aim shot hits a target within 0.3 seconds of being fired, increases damage by 36%. Otherwise, decrease damage by 10%. And this is at Refinement 1. Considering it's a 3-star, we can actually expect Refinement 5, which is increased damage by 60%. Now, it's not confirmed yet whether or not this passive works in Childe's melee form, but assuming it does, this would really be even better than Rust, and it's a 3-star weapon, and you're sacrificing just a little bit of attack, and you're trading the attack substat for crit rate percent. So assuming Slingshot works the way we're hoping it will, this is an amazing option that you can build super easily if you have Childe. As far as artifacts goes, let's start at the bottom of the list and talk about low rarity all the way up to high rarity. If somehow you lucked out and you got Childe still within this early mid-game, then we recommend going 4-piece Instructor. The 2-set increases Elemental Mastery by 80, which is great for proccing the elemental reactions, which you can do very easily with E. Upon triggering a reaction, increase all party members' Elemental Mastery by 120 for 8 seconds. Again, this synergizes super well because Childe is amazing at proccing elemental reactions, which also get boosted by the Elemental Mastery that he gets. So this is sort of a positive feedback loop where he'll create reactions, get more mastery, and then do more damage through his reactions. Alternatively, if you want to use him as more of a normal attack DPS character, then we think Martial Artist is great for set as well. The 2-piece increases normal attack and charge attack damage by 15%, and then after using a skill, which would send him into the melee form, he increases normal attack and charge attack damage by 25% for 8 seconds. So this really functions in a similar way to Instructor, but it's just with a different playstyle, so which one you use really depends on you. As we move into the higher tiers, we recommend mixing in some Wanderer's Troop with the Instructor, so we'll have 80 Elemental Mastery from Wanderers and 80 Elemental Mastery from Instructor, which gives you 160 total, and this is just a really strong and consistent buff for those elemental reactions, which we've already talked about how easy it is for him to utilize. And of course, there's a set that is, according to the wiki, yet to be released, which is Depth of Heart. If this works the way that it's written here, increase hydro damage bonus by 15% on 2-set, and then on 4-set, after using an elemental skill, which again sends him into melee form, increases normal attack and charge attack damage by 25% for 12 seconds. This is a good mix of getting that elemental damage along with the synergy with his normal attacks and charge attacks in melee form. So this is probably one of the best sets for him, if not the best. But let's not forget about our sleeper agent here, which is Gambler. So the reason why we bring this one up last is because it's very volatile and could potentially be the best set for Childe. So on 2-piece, you're getting elemental skill damage increased by 20%, which is fine, but more importantly, on 4-set, defeating an enemy has a 100% chance to remove elemental skill cooldown, and this can occur once every 15 seconds. Now considering Childe's E can last for 30 seconds, you're getting at least 2 chances with Gambler to completely reset this cooldown. This would make his melee form uptime insanely high. And so we think that this is a great option. It's basically like getting one of his high tier constellations in an artifact set. So this is very, very valuable if this works the way that we're imagining. We highly recommend getting Gambler, trying it out, and then seeing how it affects the melee uptime because we think this is probably one of the best sets for him. Now as always, we're going to end this video with a free to play value assessment. And for us, this was kind of hard. We're going to settle between a 3 and a 4 out of 10. And the reason for this is because, as Hal mentioned at the very beginning, Childe's constellation breakpoints are 4 and 6, which are obviously higher up. They're really hard to get. He's a 5-star. So if you want to play Childe at his max potential, it's going to be very, very difficult to reach that and not cost efficient at all. On the other hand, it balances out a little bit because of his effectiveness with lower tier artifacts and weapons due to the way that his kit works. So ultimately, we leave him at a 3 out of 10. We think he has potential, but it really depends on how you build him and what constellations you have. That does it all for this video. If you agree or disagree with our builds, our use cases, what weapons and artifacts you think you should use, please let us know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more Genshin Impact and Exo Heroes content. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.